The rain had been falling for hours, not the gentle kind that made driving relaxing. This was the relentless kind that swallowed the road, blurred every road sign, and turned the windshield into a wall of moving water. At 11:47 p.m., Ethan Mercer gripped the steering wheel tighter as another flash of lightning illuminated the empty mountain highway. He had just left his best friend's wedding nearly 300 miles away. Staying another night hadn't been an option. He had work Monday morning, and the drive seemed manageable when he started. Now, he wasn't so sure. His GPS suddenly froze. The screen blinked twice before displaying a single message. Searching for signal? Ethan sighed. Perfect. There wasn't another car in sight, just endless forest, dark cliffs, and rain. A few minutes later, a flickering neon sign emerged through the storm. Raven's Fuel. The tiny gas station looked abandoned, except for one old pickup parked beside the pumps. Ethan pulled in. The station's lights buzzed weakly overhead. Inside, an elderly man slowly looked up from an old newspaper. "You heading east?" the man asked. Ethan nodded. "Back home." The old man stared at him longer than necessary. "Don't stop for anybody after mile marker 92. Ethan chuckled awkwardly. "What?" The attendant didn't smile. "No matter who you see." Silence filled the room. Ethan assumed it was just another small-town ghost story. He paid for the fuel. As he reached the door, the old man quietly added, "Especially if they're asking for help." 20 minutes later, the highway became even darker. Trees crowded both sides of the road until the headlights barely reached beyond the pavement. The rain eased slightly. Then, he saw her, a young woman, standing alone beside the road, completely soaked, waving both arms desperately. Ethan slowed instinctively. She couldn't have been older than 25. Her clothes were muddy. One sleeve was torn. She looked terrified. The warning from the gas station echoed inside his head. "Don't stop." He hesitated. Then he saw tears running down her face. He pulled over. She climbed into the passenger seat without saying thank you, without even looking at him. She simply locked the door. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked. She nodded silently. "Do you need a hospital?" "No." "The police?" Another slow shake of her head. Minutes passed. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Ethan asked, "What happened?" She stared out the windshield. "They're still behind us." Ethan looked in the mirror. "Nothing, only darkness. I don't see anyone. You will." The radio crackled. Static exploded through the speakers. Every station disappeared simultaneously. Then a voice, barely audible. "Don't stop." The signal vanished. Ethan frowned. His phone now showed no service. Every navigation app had disappeared. Only a blank map remained. He laughed nervously. "That's weird." The passenger never reacted. Instead, she kept watching the rear window. 5 minutes later, headlights appeared, far behind them, except there were no headlights, only the outline of a vehicle. Moving through darkness. Impossible. Ethan rubbed his eyes. The black SUV seemed to absorb the night itself. No lights, no reflections, just closer, closer, closer. "That's them," the woman whispered. His heartbeat accelerated. "Who?" She never answered. The SUV matched his speed exactly. Whenever Ethan accelerated, it accelerated. Whenever he slowed, it slowed. Always the same distance behind, never passing, never falling back. Eventually, another sign appeared. Blackstone Tunnel, 2 miles the 40. The woman suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm. Her fingers were freezing cold. "Don't go inside." "What?" "They're waiting." Ethan looked ahead. The tunnel entrance appeared like a giant black mouth carved into the mountain. Turning around wasn't possible. The road had steep cliffs on both sides. The SUV moved closer. For the first time, its windshield became visible. Completely black. No driver. No passengers. Just darkness. Ethan slammed the accelerator. The car raced toward the tunnel. The SUV followed immediately. As they crossed into darkness, everything changed. The dashboard lights died. Engine stalled. Headlights vanished. Absolute blackness. Ethan could only hear breathing, not his own. Someone else's. Very close. Then, the passenger whispered, "I'm sorry." The car lights suddenly returned. The engine roared back to life. Ethan looked toward the passenger seat. Empty. The woman was gone. The passenger door remained locked. Rainwater still covered the seat, but she had vanished. The SUV behind him was gone too. He drove another 50 miles without stopping, not once. At sunrise, he reached the nearest police station. Officers listened patiently, then asked for the woman's description. One officer slowly walked into another room. He returned carrying an old newspaper clipping. The front page showed a smiling young woman, the exact same face. "This is Emily Carter," the officer said quietly. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Where is she?" The officer hesitated. "She disappeared on Highway 17. Ethan's hands began shaking. "When?" The answer nearly stopped his heart. 8 years ago, search teams had found her abandoned backpack, her phone, her shoes, but never her. Locals claimed she still appeared during storms, trying to stop passing drivers. Most people believed it was only another ghost story, until travelers started reporting the exact same encounter. Every witness described a frightened young woman, wet clothes, torn sleeve, looking over her shoulder, always saying the same words. "They're still behind us." Authorities never found another vehicle, never identified any suspects, and no security camera has ever captured the mysterious black SUV. Some people believe exhausted drivers simply imagined everything. Others refuse to drive Highway 17 after dark, especially during heavy rain, because every few years, someone disappears, leaving behind only an abandoned car, still running, driver's door open, passenger seats soaked with fresh rainwater, as if someone had just climbed inside. The highway had been empty for nearly an hour. Not a single car, not a single truck, just miles of cracked asphalt stretching through dense forest, under a moon hidden behind thick clouds. Daniel Harper glanced at the dashboard clock. 12:38 a.m. His eyes burned from driving. He had spent the entire day attending a business conference in another state and decided to make the 6-hour trip home instead of paying for another hotel. Now he was beginning to regret that decision. Without warning, the engine sputtered. The steering wheel vibrated violently. A loud metallic grinding sound echoed beneath the car. Then, silence. The vehicle rolled to a stop on the shoulder. Daniel tried the ignition again. Nothing. His phone showed 1% battery. No signal. No roadside assistance. Only darkness. He stepped outside. Cold wind swept through the trees. The silence felt unnatural. No insects, no birds, not even the sound of leaves moving, just the faint ticking of his cooling engine. Then, far ahead, a flickering neon light appeared through the fog. It read, Pine Ridge Motel. The sign buzzed weakly, with half the letters burned out. Daniel grabbed his backpack and started walking. The motel looked as though it had been forgotten decades ago. Paint peeled from every wall. Broken flower pots lined the entrance. Several windows were boarded shut. Only the office remained illuminated. Inside sat an elderly woman knitting quietly behind the counter. Without looking up, she spoke. "You'll be wanting a room." Daniel smiled nervously. "My car broke down." "I know." Her answer caught him off guard. "You saw it?" She finally looked at him. "No." Her eyes were strangely pale. "We only have one room left." She slid an old brass key across the desk. The tag read, 27. Daniel signed the register. Curious, he glanced at the previous names. Every page before his was blank. No guests, no dates, nothing. The woman noticed him staring. "We don't get many visitors." She handed him the key. "Whatever you hear tonight," she paused. "Don't open your door." Daniel forced a laugh. "I'll keep that in mind." She didn't laugh back. Room 27 sat at the very end of the motel. The hallway lights flickered constantly. The carpet smelled damp. When he unlocked the room, everything looked surprisingly clean. A neatly made bed, an old television, a wooden dresser, a bathroom with a large cracked mirror. Nothing seemed unusual. He plugged his nearly dead phone into the wall outlet. It wouldn't charge. The screen flashed once, then went black. Daniel sighed. He decided to sleep. At exactly 1:00 a.m., 3 knocks echoed through the room. Knock, knock, knock. He sat upright. Someone stood outside. "Hello?" No answer. He looked through the peephole. Empty hallway. Nobody. He opened the door anyway. Nothing. Just the buzzing lights. Thinking someone was playing a prank, he locked the door again. Exactly 1 hour later, 2:00 a.m., the same 3 knocks. This time louder. He ignored them. Another 3 knocks followed immediately. Then silence. His heartbeat quickened. He checked the hallway again. Still empty. Back inside, he noticed something odd. His suitcase. had moved. He clearly remembered leaving it beside the bed. Now it stood near the bathroom. He frowned. Maybe he had forgotten. Maybe he was just tired. He pushed the thought aside. Morning arrived. The elderly woman served him coffee in the office. Daniel mentioned the knocking. She stirred her tea slowly. What time? 1 o'clock. And then again at 2. She nodded. As expected. Daniel waited for an explanation. None came. Instead, she asked, "Did you answer?" I opened the door. For the first time, the woman's expression changed. Fear. Real fear. You must never do that again. Daniel laughed. There wasn't anyone there, she whispered. That's because you were lucky. The mechanic in the nearest town couldn't inspect the car until the next afternoon. Daniel had no choice. He spent another night. Again. Room 27. He promised himself he wouldn't open the door. Midnight passed quietly. Then, 1 o'clock a.m., 3 knocks. He ignored them. A voice spoke softly from outside. Daniel. His blood froze. It sounded exactly like his younger sister. Impossible. She lived hundreds of miles away. Daniel. I need help. He stood slowly. Every instinct told him to open the door. Then he remembered the old woman's warning. He stepped away instead. The voice became desperate. Please, you left me. Tears filled his eyes. It sounded so real. Then the voice changed, becoming deeper, slower, not human. The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Daniel barely slept. The following morning, he inspected the motel more carefully. Only 6 rooms appeared occupied, or so he thought. Every room number existed except 26. The hallway jumped directly from 25 to 27. Confused, Daniel asked the owner, "What happened to room 26? She looked toward the hallway. It burned. When? A long time ago. How? She didn't answer. Instead, she quietly locked the office door. That afternoon, while waiting for the mechanic, Daniel visited the town library. The librarian recognized the motel immediately. Pine Ridge? You actually stayed there? Daniel nodded. The librarian disappeared into the archives. She returned carrying an old newspaper. The headline read, Fire Claims 5 Lives at Pine Ridge Motel. The article was dated 1989. One photograph showed firefighters standing outside the motel. Daniel stared at the image. The building looked identical. Nothing had changed. Then he noticed something chilling. The burned room was number 27, not 26. His stomach dropped. According to the article, room 27 had been completely destroyed. The motel closed permanently after the fire. It had never reopened. That evening, Daniel raced back to collect his belongings. The parking lot was empty. No lights, no office, no cars, no sign of life. The neon motel sign lay broken in the grass. The building stood abandoned, covered in vines, every window shattered. Daniel slowly approached the office. Dust covered everything. Spider webs hung from the ceiling. The front desk had collapsed years ago. Yet, the old guest register still rested on the counter. He opened it. The final entry was dated 1989. There was no signature with his name, no record that he had ever checked in. Then, 3 knocks echoed from deep inside the abandoned hallway. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel didn't wait to investigate. He ran. He never looked back. His car was mysteriously repaired when he reached the highway, despite the mechanic never touching it. Years later, Daniel still refuses to drive after dark. And whenever business trips force him onto unfamiliar roads, he always checks one thing before booking a room: the room number. Because somewhere, on an abandoned stretch of highway, travelers still report seeing the faded neon glow of Pine Ridge Motel. Most who stop claim there's only one room available. Room 27. And if you hear 3 knocks after midnight, whatever you do, don't open the door. The departure board flashed one final update. Flight 302. On time. It was 10:55 p.m. The terminal buzzed with the familiar sounds of rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, and exhausted travelers eager to get home. For Olivia Bennett, the overnight flight was supposed to be uneventful. 3 days of business meetings had left her drained, and all she wanted was a few hours of sleep before landing the next morning. She found her seat, 18A, next to the window. Passengers continued boarding. Families settled children. Business travelers opened laptops. A young couple argued quietly over who had forgotten the charger. Everything felt perfectly ordinary, until a man hurried down the aisle. He looked to be in his early 40s. His clothes were wrinkled, his face was pale. He wasn't carrying any luggage. As he reached seat 22C, he suddenly stopped and stared toward the rear of the aircraft. His breathing became rapid. A flight attendant approached him. "Sir, is everything all right?" The man leaned closer and whispered something. The attendant frowned. "I'm sorry?" he repeated himself. This time Olivia caught a few words. "There's someone else on this plane." The attendant smiled politely. "Everyone on board has already checked in." The man slowly shook his head. "No, someone boarded, but they were never supposed to." Underscore! Someone erroneously. The cabin doors closed. The aircraft pushed back from the gate. Within minutes, Flight 302 lifted into the night sky. The city lights disappeared beneath a blanket of clouds. Passengers relaxed. The seatbelt sign switched off. Dinner service began. The nervous man barely touched his food. Instead, he continued looking toward the back of the plane. Every few minutes, he counted rows. 1, 2, 3, then started over, as though checking whether everyone was still there. Underscore. Nearly 2 hours into the flight, the cabin lights dimmed. Most passengers were asleep. Only the quiet hum of the engines filled the air. Olivia woke when she heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, walking down the aisle. She looked up. No one. The aisle was empty. She assumed someone had already passed. Then the footsteps continued, directly beside her seat. Still, nobody. The sound traveled toward the rear of the aircraft before stopping completely. A cold chill ran through her body. 10 minutes later, the seatbelt sign illuminated without warning. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're expecting a brief period of turbulence." The aircraft shook violently. Overhead bins rattled. Several passengers gasped. Then, every light inside the cabin went out. Complete darkness. For 3 long seconds. When the emergency lighting activated, something felt different. People looked around nervously. A child started crying. One flight attendant slowly counted the occupied seats, then counted again. She hurried toward the cockpit. The turbulence ended. Normal lighting returned. The crew continued walking through the cabin, but now they looked visibly anxious. Olivia noticed one attendant staring repeatedly at a tablet, displaying the passenger manifest. Another whispered into a phone connected to the cockpit. Whatever was happening, the crew didn't want passengers to know. Underscore. Around 3 a.m., Olivia went to use the restroom near the rear galley. The hallway was empty. As she washed her hands, she heard someone speaking softly from the last row. She peeked around the corner. The nervous man from seat 22C stood there alone, facing the very back wall of the aircraft, whispering, "No, you can't leave here. Not again." Before Olivia could speak, he turned abruptly. His face was completely drained of color. "You heard them too." It wasn't a question. She hesitated. Heard who? He glanced over his shoulder. The extra passenger. Olivia felt a knot form in her stomach. "What are you talking about?" Instead of answering, he pointed toward the rear service door. "There should only be 68 people back here. There are 69. She looked around. Every seat appeared occupied. Nothing unusual. When she turned back, the man had already walked away. Underscore. An hour before landing, a loud alarm sounded from the cockpit. Not the emergency evacuation alarm. Something quieter. Internal. The captain made another announcement. "Please remain seated while our crew conducts a routine safety check." The attendants moved rapidly through every row, checking seat numbers, boarding passes, passenger names. One attendant stopped beside seat 31B. She frowned. The seat was empty. A blanket remained folded neatly across the armrest. A half-finished bottle of water sat in the cup holder. The entertainment screen still displayed a paused movie. The passenger was gone. No one remembered seeing them leave. The lavatories were empty. Crew rest areas were empty. Cargo access remained locked. There was simply no sign of the missing traveler. Underscore. Flight 302 landed safely just before sunrise. As passengers entered the terminal, airport police quietly asked everyone to remain nearby. No explanation was given. Olivia watched officers board the aircraft carrying tablets and cameras. Hours later, news reports began appearing online. Authorities confirmed one passenger had disappeared during the flight, but the mystery deepened. Security footage clearly showed the missing traveler checking in, passing security, boarding the aircraft, taking seat 31B. Yet no camera recorded them leaving. Not through the terminal. not through customs, nowhere. Underscore, investigators spent weeks reviewing cockpit recordings, surveillance footage, and maintenance logs. Nothing explained the disappearance. Then another discovery made the case even stranger. The passenger manifest listed 189 people on board, but the aircraft's automated weight and balance system recorded the weight of 190 passengers during the first half of the flight. Approximately 2 hours later, the recorded weight dropped back to normal. No equipment malfunction could be found. Underscore. Police searched for the nervous man from seat 22C. According to airline records, no passenger had been assigned that seat. Olivia couldn't believe it. She distinctly remembered speaking to him. Several other passengers also recalled seeing him. Flight attendants remembered serving him dinner. Yet security footage from boarding showed seat 22C remaining empty throughout the entire process. There was no ticket, no passport, no identity. Officially, he had never existed. Underscore months later, the investigation quietly ended. No arrests, no suspects, no explanation. The missing traveler was never found. Most people assumed the airline had hidden the truth. Others believed it was an elaborate government cover-up. But aviation experts still debate one detail. Every few years, on overnight flights crossing remote stretches of ocean, cabin crews occasionally report an unexplained discrepancy during passenger counts. One person, too many. The count is repeated. Everything appears normal. Moments later, the number returns to what it should be. No missing passenger. No extra passenger. No evidence. Just a brief moment when the aircraft seems to carry someone who was never meant to be there. So if you ever board a late-night flight and notice a nervous traveler quietly counting the passengers, you may want to count them yourself. Just be careful, because if your number doesn't match everyone else's, you might discover that the extra passenger is sitting much closer than you think. Outro: 3 different journeys, 3 ordinary trips, a lonely highway, a forgotten motel, an overnight flight. Each traveler believed they were simply trying to get home. Instead, they encountered something that has never been fully explained. Some people dismiss stories like these as coincidence, exhaustion, or imagination. Others believe that certain roads, places, and flights hold secrets that refuse to stay buried. The next time you travel alone late at night, pay attention to the small details. A warning from a stranger, an empty motel with 1 room left, or a passenger who seems a little too nervous. Because sometimes, the most terrifying destination is the one you never planned to reach. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments which story kept you awake the longest. And remember, travel safely. You never know who or what might be traveling with you.